Hello everyone, welcome back to IT and Research Accelerator. In today's practical ICT tutorial, we're going to learn the essential Microsoft Excel skills that every student needs to know. This lesson is designed for beginners who need to organize data, perform simple calculations, prepare tables, and create just basic charts. By the end of this video, you will understand workbooks, worksheets, rows, columns, cells, data entry, simple formulas, autofill, and just how we can save these files correctly. So let's begin with opening Microsoft Excel. First, you click on the Start button or the search bar on your computer. Remember, on the taskbar down here is where you can find those options. The Start is here and the search is here. You type Microsoft Excel and you open the application. So Microsoft Excel, and you choose this one of the application, then you click open. On the opening screen, we're going to click blank workbook. A workbook is an Excel file itself, while a worksheet is one page inside the workbook. So we're going to choose the blank, and you can see there is something here called sheet 1 or page 1. It's more like pages. So in a Microsoft Excel workbook, it contains several worksheets. So you can add or delete. So we'll start by understanding just the basics of this Microsoft Excel interface. At the top, we have a ribbon which contains tabs such as Home, Insert, Page Layout, Formulas, Data, Review, and View. So I hope we can see the ribbon. This first part shows us the name of our worksheet, our workbook, and it's Book 1. But we are going to rename it. So at the moment, the name is Book 1. We have the saving options and undo and so forth. But I'm talking about the second ribbon. Here, where we can see this cursor moving, it is the main working area. And this time round, you see, it is formed with rows and columns. Rows are these lines that are running horizontally, and they are identified using numbers. For example, here where you're seeing number 1, that is a row. Where you're seeing number 2, it is a row. Where you're seeing number 3, it is a row, and so on and so forth. While the columns, on the other hand, for them they run vertically, and they are identified using letters. That is to say, this is column 1, identified with letter A, column 2 identified with letter B, letter C, and so on and so forth. Where a row and a column meet, we have what we call a cell. So, for example, this part, a row 2, and column D, they are meeting. So this is a cell. And how do we read these cells? Every cell has a unique address. So we understand, or we need to understand, cell references. Every cell has a unique address that we call cell reference. For example, remember we said where the column meets with the row is what we call a cell. Now the reference is more like what shall we call it when we are referring to that cell. So the reference, first we start with the column letter, that is D. So we'll go to the roll number, that is 2, meaning that this cell here will now be referenced as cell D2. This cell here will look at the vertical column A and the number or the row that is intersecting or that is meeting with it is 1, and this cell will become cell A1. So that's how we can be able to reference. A refers to the column, while 1 refers to the row. If I select this cell, the name box shows A1. The name box is here. If I select this one, the name box shows B1. So that is how we do cell referencing. Cell references are very important because Excel formulas use them when they are identifying where the data is located. After we have understood this cell referencing, the next is entering data. Now, let us create a simple student marks table. In cell A1, we are going to type student name. In cell B1, we are going to type coursework. We can adjust the width and the length of the cells. So in B1, we want to type coursework. In C1, we want to type, maybe we can type test, just dummy data for practice purposes. In cell D1, we want to type examination. Cell E1, we can type there total. F1, we could type something like average. Now, we're going to enter, these fields are enough, or these columns are enough. Now, we're going to enter a few student names and marks below these headings. So, how do we move to the next cell? We can press the tab, or we can just go. When you press the tab, it will keep moving. So, instead of having to move the cursor, you can just come here. Maybe the first student is called Mildred. You press the tab and you give them their coursework mark. Let's assume it's 20. Press tab. And this one is 45. Press tab. Examination, they scored 70. We can first pause on the total. We'll work out the total. Maybe the next student is Mercy. You press tab, and here let's say they have 25. Here they have maybe 50. And in the exam, they scored 90. Another student could be Patience. And the coursework, let's assume for them they have 40. Press tab. 58, press tab, 67, and we can play around with these three students. So, the tab helps us to move to the next cell. And to move to the cell below, we can always use the enter. To move across, we can use the tab. So, now we can always edit and delete data. To change information in a cell, you just need to double click the cell and you edit the content. You can also select the cell and use the formula bar. To remove the contents, you can select the cell and you press delete. Remember that deleting content does not automatically remove the cell itself. But we can do edits. For example, we can choose to say this has to be bold and this is also bold. Maybe we can even edit the text color. We can say let the total be in red and also bold. So we can always do different edits. We can delete. Let's assume here we had maximum. But then you feel like you need to delete this data. You just select it, go on your keyboard, and you delete. The cell will remain, but the data itself will be gone. Another thing we need to know, you saw when I was typing student name, it was not fitting. You see, if we put it back, it shows student name, but the statement is incomplete. So something else we need to know when working with Microsoft Excel is we need to adjust column width. If information does not fit properly, place the mouse pointer between two column headings. You see, I have column A and column B. So you put your cursor here. When the double-headed arrow appears, you can see this arrow is double-headed on the left and on the right. You click and you drag to increase or to reduce. So you will drag or reduce. So that is how we adjust the column width. You can also double-click the boundary to automatically fit the content. So whichever method is easier is what you can use. Another thing we do in Excel is formatting the table. You select the headings in the first row, and then you can be able to apply some edits. For example, we can choose to say all these headings in the first row, we want to format them. So we select all of them. Also, instead of selecting an entire row, you can press Shift and you keep moving to only the column with the last heading, that is average. And under Home tab, you can make them bold at the same time. You can make them italic. You can even make them underlined. In the previous video in Microsoft Word, at least we were able to try all these edits. So they don't stop in that. Even in Microsoft Excel, they can apply. You can also apply the alignment, center align. You can put borders. Here we have borders. You can choose, do you want to put all the borders? So formatting makes worksheets easy to read, but also avoid too much formatting. Using many colors, sometimes it looks unprofessional. Another beautiful thing that Microsoft Excel offers are different functions and formulas. Now, let us calculate the total mark for the first student. If you remember what we said in terms of cells, this is cell E2. You can even see here, like we said in the name box, the moment we put a cursor here, it tells us that that is cell E2. So in cell E2, we want to calculate the total marks for the first student. So we want to use the formula for summation or for getting the total. Every Excel formula begins with an equal sign. So we are going to type equals, and then we type the formula. Since we want the sum, we'll put sum. You can even come here and you select it. Will always show you that this function or this formula is going to add all the numbers in the range of cells. So we want to select the sum of the numbers. The moment you put the first bracket, they're asking you what is the first number. So the first number we want to see their coursework marks. But also we want to continue. So sometimes you can drag or you can keep clicking that I want the total marks for cell B2, C2 and D2. And when you're done, you close the brackets and then press enter. The sum function has added the values from cells B2 to D2. Instead of adding each value manually, Excel calculates the total automatically. But please note, we have done this for only the first student, that is Mildred, but we have other students. In this demonstration, we are having only 3. Mercy, Mildred, Patience. But there will be scenarios where you're having thousands and thousands of data. So we use something we call the AutoFill. You don't need to type that same formula for every student, no. We can select cell E2 and then we move the pointer to the small square at the bottom right corner. When we come here, you see at the bottom right corner, we are moving our pointer. And at that bottom right corner of this cell where we calculated the total, we are going to click there and we drag it down. So you see when we come here, we drag and we drag up to the end. But here we are going to stop on this third student. What happens when you drag? You see, Excel is copying the formula that initially was used, and it is automatically adjusting that formula according to the new row references. This feature is called AutoFill. So in case maybe you realize that these students instead of 35 they had 25 they had 35, automatically Excel is going to be updating. So AutoFill is one other beautiful feature. We also have average. So in the next first student, let's get their average. We'll follow the same procedure. Put equal signs and type average. We want the average of these few remarks. So we want the average for this mark first, and then we want to add on the, we're still adding the average for the coursework mark, the test mark, and the exam mark. Then we press enter. The average function has calculated the mean of those selected marks. We want to test that autofill feature again. So we are going to use it again, and we see this formula copying to all these other students. Come in the top right corner, in the bottom right corner, drag up to the last student. And you can see the same average formula has been copied using the exact cell reference values. So Excel can perform many calculations using even mathematical operators. It uses the plus sign for addition, minus for subtraction, the asterisk for multiplication, the forward slash for division. For example, we can choose to say we want to add B2 plus C2. B2 is this value, C2 is this value. And then we'll just come and put equal signs, and then we say I want to add B2 plus, you see we are using the plus sign, C2, and then you enter. It will add the value and it will give you a response. And literally when we add 20 and 45, the answer we get is 65. However, functions such as sum and average are often more convenient when we are working with several cells. That's why you see, instead of having to do it manually, sometimes we just opt for those functions. Some other things that Excel does, it does something to do with sorting data. To arrange the students according to their total marks, we need to select the table, and then we can be able to sort. So let's say we want to sort data here in this column for examination. So we just need to choose that column, and then we go to the data tab here and be able to sort. But also, as we are doing all this, please note that some versions of Microsoft Excel may have a different interface, but the things are the same. So in the data tab, we'll come here on sort and we choose. Do you want to sort from the smallest to the largest, that is A to Z or A to Z? Or do you want from the largest to the smallest, that is Z to A? So if you want from the largest, you click. It is going to ask you if you want to continue with the current selection or you want to to expand. So we've continued and you can see the largest is 90. Maybe you want it the other way around. Start with the smallest 67. You still click and they'll ask you the same thing. If you're okay, continue, and you can see it is now sorting from smallest. Something else we do, we can create charts. Charts help us to represent information visually. We can select student names and the total marks. And then we go to insert. So maybe we want to select the student names and the total marks, or student names and the coursework. We can actually take these two columns. So you just need to select the data and choose a suitable chart. Where do we find this? We come to the Insert tab, and there will be different charts here in the chart tools. So we can go for recommended charts based on the data selected, and then we click OK. So it will insert for us a chart showing that Mildred, her score is here on 20. Mercy, her score is 35. Patience, her score is 40. You can add a chart title and you say maybe students coursework. Students coursework. So you can even change the layout. You can resize this chart. You can just select it and change its layout. You can put percentages or numbers. You can change the format. All these are different things that you can do. Let's make it easy to compare results and to present information in a more clear way. What more? I'm trying to do some basics. What more? We can also rename our worksheets. You see down here at the bottom, you're having sheet 1, sheet 2. You can create, just click the plus button and you create more sheets. And when you want to delete, you just right click and you delete. But also, sometimes you need to rename. You can just highlight this and give it a name. Maybe you double click and you give it a name like Student Max. Student Max. Or you right click, come on rename and say Extra Max, or any name that you want to give it. So one could just say, let me have it spaced. That is another thing we can do. We can add a worksheet. We've already seen that we can delete and all that. There are very many beautiful things we can do in Microsoft Excel. But all in all, we need to save our workbooks. This Excel file needs to be saved. Remember, up here, they're still referring to the default name that is book 1. We need to give it a name that is easy to be identified. So, how do we save then? We come here on File. The moment you come on File, you choose where you want this to be stored, to be saved. I always love to, when you come on File, come to Save As and choose where you want to be saved. I always love to browse and go to the desktop because it's easy to access things. Desktop, I have a folder called ICT Basics. That is where I'm going to put this file. But also you need to specify the file name. Please and please type a clear file name. For example, it could be Excel Practical. Excel Practical. But also, sometimes they have instructed you on what file name to give. Maybe your registration number, your first name. Then you click Save. Excel workbooks will have the extension for Excel, and that extension is .xlsx. So when you click Save, and we come back on the desktop to check that folder here, ICT Basics, my file is here, up here. Let me change the view to make it bigger. It is here, Excel Practical. And when you open it, it will give us the work we have been working on. So those are some of the basics and some mistakes we always make. Sometimes we can enter numbers as text. We can forget to begin formulas with the equal signs, using incorrect cell references, typing marks manually instead of using formulas. You can end up sorting maybe one column and then separating it from the other correlated results, deleting accidentally some information. But with practice, we can always get used and overcome those small errors, and always review your data and formulas before submitting your work. You have now learned the essential Microsoft Excel skills needed to organize data, to perform basic calculations, to create charts, to save a workbook correctly. In the next tutorial, we shall learn Microsoft PowerPoint basics, including creating slides, selecting layouts, adding pictures, applying transitions, and presenting a slideshow. Subscribe to IT and Research Accelerator for more practical ICT, programming, embedded systems, cybersecurity, and research tutorials. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.